target or directionally aim the HARP facility, which is a bunch of antenna. It's called J-pole antennas that are all in arrays. They can point the frequency toward a different direction. It will cause the atmosphere to be cleared and raise or ionize any water molecules. If it continues to do that, it can heat it up. These cause holes, but it does some other things, and you all are all aware of that. But that's from the Waterman Files, where the project in Keflavik, Iceland, resulted in extremely low frequency installations for the U.S. Navy, I'm sure, and is very similar to what you see at HARP now. That was 20 years, almost 20 years before HARP got installed. Okay, well, as I said, thanks for writing and continuing to write. A flu protocol, if you want to know what my flu protocol is, all updated and so forth. And if you want it, write us, and I'll get it to you. If you want to, you can go to the John Chronicles at WordPress.com, and I'm going to give this same protocol again, updated, however, to Arguso Hans, there, our faithful, steadfast fella there at ArgusoogRadio, and we're going to put it up. So contact me. And I want to tell you a couple things here, also from the community aspect, and that is what we're dealing with in regards to survival. You know, Wall Street expert and a former Morgan Stanley research guru by the name of Barton Biggs says that, and this is on Business Insider, which will be posted at ArgusoogRadio and on the blog, the Chronicles. He says for the Wall Street folks and all the people with money, and by the way, there are people with lots of money out there, that they're to find them some property that's a safe haven and stock it with food and firearms to protect against pillagers. And they're to become capable of growing their own food and stock it with seeds and fertilizer, canned foods, wine, medicines, and clothes. He continues by saying, get a gun. You know, folks, there's no guarantee that the supermarket in your area has to have food. Did you know that there's no law? I mean, there are tons and tons of laws out there, right? But you know there's no law that says that they have to provide food or that there has to be food? Did you ever stop and think about the fact that you're just assuming the grocery store, number one, will stay in business, and number two, that it will, if it's not there, somebody else will be? How do you know? Maybe nobody will be able to. So there's no guarantee that the supermarkets will be there. The government doesn't have any food to give you anymore. They're not going to give you food. And if they do, they'll want your firstborn and a DNA sample and blood. And you might have to actually say 3 Hail Marys to Obama or something like that, at least in the United States, maybe even all over the world. Let me tell you what's going on. We just went to a chain grocery store, by the way, not Walmart. In that chain grocery store, sorry for the beeps, guys, the chain grocery store we go to isn't Walmart. They had a sign in their produce area, and they said that their produce was going to be short because the weather had froze the produce and the fruit. So don't be expecting produce as much as we've had and to see shortages, and also that fruit was going to be in short supply, and that this shortage would continue because the plants were destroyed that produced both fruit and produce. So the sign came up, so guess what? The sign went up, the prices went up, and the food went down. So you can go to parts of the produce section now and see completely empty areas. So folks, it has begun. And what has begun? Well, January wholesale prices jumped 1.4%, which equals 16.8% annual. The Fed bumps the rates up for banks in case they have an emergency loan. Oh, I wonder if they'll ever create a situation like that. China sold $34.2 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. They're dumping their debt. And they can sell that when they can't sell businesses. The jobless claims in the United States rose 31,000 last week. Now, how many are dropping off isn't counted. Isn't it interesting that unemployment is only counting those people that are on that take unemployment? How many of you patriots out there have actually qualified for unemployment and didn't take it? You know, there was a day when that happened. The jobless claims are going to rise. Well, since China's sold off this $34.2 billion, Japan now holds the largest U.S. bond debt. But does China have more? Yes, of course, like I mentioned in the predictions for this coming year. China's investments are more than just public debt with the government. Much more. When you include businesses. Business investments included in the debt rack it up to be $1 trillion. So, when China has $1 trillion invested in the U.S., when you American companies are included, you got to ask the question: who owns the company? Well, let me ask you: if you know, do you know of any American company that goes to China to get a loan for a business? That's not how it works, is it? So how does China own us? How does China own American businesses? How do they do that? With the cooperation of your friendly federal government. That's how. Here's what they do. Businesses go to a bank. They get a loan. The bank takes that loan and sells it. Might be sold to who knows. And they take all these loans and they put them into an aggregate. They put them all together. They package them up, put a really pretty red ribbon on it. And a representative of the banks and the Federal Reserve go to China and sell it. If you went broke, you'd be having to pay China. Now get this. Several states with high unemployment are outsourcing food stamp services. There was this lady that was in Florida that was 52 years old. She ran out of employment. She was a nanny, and they got cut back who she was working for, so she got cut. Well, she was calling in her food stamps and was having trouble understanding who was on the list. It was a contractor that the state of Florida, who has, by the way, been hit very hard by the Depression, hired the Florida State people